Hello, mini makers. Today we're going to be making a sort of cyberpunk inspired floor access hatch. I'm going to be trying out a different workflow called it's called hard ops and box cutter. So if I'm going a little bit slow, it's because I'm trying to figure out how to use these new workflows. They're apparently very good for this kind of stuff, but I'm still learning. All right. So the first thing we're gonna do is I already have my reference image pulled up. I'm not gonna make this exact kind of thing, but this is what I'm gonna use for my basis. I like starting from a very real place because if you look at most sci-fi, it starts from a very real place and then it gets a little bit of stuff added to it. And then if you have a bunch of real things with a little bit of stuff added to it, if you do that over the entire scene or an entire movie or I'm doing this for miniatures. If you do that over an entire like battlefield, it starts looking very sci-fi, where one will just look like, oh, that looks like an access panel with a keyboard on it or a touchpad on it. Okay, so the first thing I did was found the dimensions of what this would be like in real life. And then I did some math to figure out how much it would be in millimeters if I'm using 32 millimeter scale. This is for war games and stuff. So that's like 19.5 meters. Well, millimeters. This says meters, but it'll get translated to meters when I print it. Okay, so then let me turn on the keys. Okay, perfect. So we can do numpad 7 or plus the Z in this corner to kind of get a top-down view. Use numpad 7 just there. And the first thing I'm going to do is going to make this area here, the outward recess. So what I'm going to do is going to try to use hard ops box cutter to do it. I'm still learning, so I'll get better at that. But for right now, we can just click on box cutter here on the left. And then we can hit D to pull out the menu. And then we want to get a square and then use the cut feature here. And you just left click and you drag to however big you want it. And then you push down however deep you want it. This is how I'm going to do it for now. There's probably a lot of other ways to do it. Well, I know there's a lot of other ways to do it, but I'm just doing this for now so I can kind of get the gist of it. So then we can go back in top-down view. We can move this cutter to the center. Then by clicking on the cutter and going into edit mode, we can manipulate the actual cutter itself. So we're going to move this up in the Z a little bit. Actually, yes, I think that's fine. And then we're just going to scale it in the Y and the X axis. And you do that by holding Shift S or Shift Z S, Shift Z. There you go. And then you can scale it in the X and Y axis. And then you can just scale in the Y axis a little bit or the X axis a little bit. Scale in the X axis. Want to do that. Maybe we can just move it to 17. Maybe this 17. Okay, I like how that looks. So now there's probably an easier way to do what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to do it this way, which is I'm going to go into the cutter. Then I'm going to go into edit mode. Then I'm going to delete the top and bottom faces only. Or I'm going to inset them a little bit. I'll get it there. If you use shift, you can get a little bit finer control. Maybe there. That's probably good. And then I'm going to delete these faces. Then I'm going to kind of make this a closed, instead of like a cube, it's more like a, I don't know how to describe what this is. So right now, this is the shape of it. So kind of like a flame. This is what I can describe it as. So right now you can see how it's not cutting through anything. That's because the top of the cutter is below the surface of the cube, which I'm just gonna call access panel. Okay, so if I take this cutter and move it in the Z direction slightly, it should cut into this, maybe. Let's see why this isn't happening. Why isn't this? This should be working. Let's see. That's weird. Oh, I think possibly. Let me see if I can just subdivide this. This could be because the normals are flipped. Hmm. Let's see. Okay, so I'm just gonna try it again. We're gonna try a different way of doing it, which is, we'll try the same way. It should work, so we'll see. Let's see if this changes anything. Okay, see, so now it works for some reason. Why, I cannot explain, but sometimes you just gotta do it again. Scale this back to 17. So this is what you should look like. And now we can close the cutter there. And we have this little inset portion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take off all of the shading, and I'm going to add a matte cap. I like this one. And then I'm going to add depth of field and cavity just so I can kind of see it better. Should be able to see it better. Let me just change this one maybe to here. Yeah. Anyway. So now we have this little section in here. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm just going to bevel it slightly, the cutter, so we can have a little bit more rounded shapes. So we can just use bevel. Okay, so let me just go from the top here, and we can bevel slightly. So we can just press Q on the cutter. So if you look at the bevel in the bottom corner, the bottom left of right corner, and probably that beveling is fine. Maybe there. So I actually don't like what it's doing to the bottom here. So instead of beveling the entire cutter, I'm just going to bevel particular edges. Right. I like how that does to the corners here. Makes them a bit more rounded. And a bit of the features are going to be exaggerated just because this is going to be put in a miniature or made as a miniature. And the same thing. Yeah, perfect. So now we can add a couple of things. I want to add a light or some type of little indicator to show that the panel is actually locked. So I'll do that by, let me see if I can do that by and just not, so I'm going to add a circle. So I'm going to click off the access panel and then add a circle in this top corner here. Or I guess a cylinder in this top panel here. And then I'm going to taper it slightly by going in, hitting Q, Mesh Tools Taper. So I'm going to taper it slightly so it's kind of a little bit of a cone there. Like that. Maybe just shrink it a little bit so the taper kind of looks a little bit more impactful. So the taper is being controlled by a lattice. So I can just go into the lattice and make the taper a little bit more visible. there. And bring it closer to the surface. Okay, like that. That's perfect. So then I'm going to kind of cut a hole in the middle of this by clicking on it, left clicking on it, and then using the cut tool with a circle. And then I'm going to center this. I'm just going to copy the, let me see if I can move this over. No, because they're parented. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the X's and the Y's locations. Okay, so now the cutter should be centered in the middle. And then I'm going to see if I can either leave it like this, or I can I think what I'll do is actually move this further down. And then I'm just gonna add a circle to this area. So this one to kind of add as a indicator light. So I'm just gonna go to mesh, add a UV sphere. Then I'm going to click the sphere and then shift click the light. I'm gonna call this light housing. I'm just gonna click this and then I'm going to shift click the light housing. Then I'm gonna go Shift S and then selection to active. That'll move the selected item, which is the circle, or sorry, the sphere, to the active item, which is the light housing. Then I'm just gonna make this a little bit smaller. Scale it down in the X dimension a little bit. I mean, to the Z dimension a little bit. Push it up just a slight amount. And now that looks like a light. Or it could be a light that indicates, hey, this is on, this is off, this is sealed, this is not sealed, kind of thing. Okay, perfect. So already from here, our original picture, over to our model that we're working on, we can see how it's already looking a little bit more cyberpunk just by adding some curves and adding a small light detail. It's essentially the same thing, but it's slowly getting there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add this portion here, which is this little portion. And then we're going to put one of these bars, kind of like a little, and then there's going to be a portion here that kind of like shackles in. Then we can lift it from this little portion. It'll make a lot more sense when I actually make it, but you'll see. Undo all that. And I'm gonna keep trying to use box cutter so I can get more experience with it. So we're gonna get a square as our cutting tool. Then we're just gonna cut a portion in here. That's possibly too deep. We'll see. I'm also looking at a little bit other reference images of just random cyberpunk things, just to constantly um, get the vibe. I am going to raise this a little bit so it's not too deep, but not too shallow because you want to be able to put your hands in it. So this isn't centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center this by just putting it where the center would be for the X. I'm going to hide this. That looks good. Let me see if I can just, I'm just going to see if I can copy this cutter and use it to cut this portion here. Let me see if that's possible. So what I want to do is create an inset around this as well. So now we're going to go here. We're going to go click on the access panel. And then we're going to add a Boolean. Because if you see these other ones, they just use Booleans. We're going to, maybe we can just click on the cutter and click on the access panel. Maybe there's a, okay, perfect. So now we can just difference here. Perfect. Yes, that's exactly what I wanted. So now we can just hide this cutter as well. And now we have a little bit more of some sort of look. You want, when painting miniatures, you always want to add a lot of little, I'm going to call them grooves and ridges and places to add like blush, like edge highlighting. So you want to add a lot of little details like this, but not too many. I'm probably going to make this a little bit bigger by shifting in the X and Y dimension, just so it doesn't look so kind of I like how it looks for now. We'll see if we just get rid of it entirely, but we'll see. So now the next step we can do is adding the little bar portion. So the way I'll do that is I'm just gonna add a cylinder, move it to where the cutter is. So take the cylinder, click the cutter, Shift S, selection active. Gonna rotate this on the y-axis 90 degrees by hitting R, Y 90. And then I'm just gonna make it a bit smaller, shift and make it smaller. And then make it a little bit bigger in the x-axis. Okay. So all this stuff is starting to look a little clamped. So what I'm going to do is make this cutter a little bit bigger here. And make the space a little bit bigger as well. Okay. There you go. So now we can make this a little bit smaller here. Then move it over. Move it down. Okay. So now what we can do that we have that is we can make the little shackle guard things, which I'm just gonna put here. And then I have to think a little bit about how you would actually open this. I believe you would grab this portion and lift it up. So you'd grab here. These would be your hands. You kind of grab that and then lift it up this way. So this would stay stationary, the bar would stay stationary, and this portion would move. Okay, that makes sense to me. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna move that down a little bit more because we want that to stay stationary. So we're gonna kind of, okay, so it's kind of in the access panel a little bit. And then we will make some shackles here by just, I'm gonna see if I can do it in box cutter, and if not, I'll do it how I normally do it, which is just by, maybe I can use the knife tool. Okay, so what that does is makes this, cuts this portion. So then we'll see if I can mirror this on the other side. No. Okay. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna cut this in half. Excuse me. I'm just gonna cut this in half here. Okay. And now what I'll do is I will take this portion. So just go into the X-Lay menu, I guess. Select this little portion here. And then I can either hit E to exclude, right click, and then Alt S. But that kind of gives it a weird shape at this end, which I don't hate. Or I can, there's another way to do this where you can scale using, there's a way to scale this using one of these tools here. Population. I will just scale it that way, and then we'll fix it a little bit later by deleting these edges here. Sorry, that side. Then using Alt left click to select that entire face or that entire edge loop, and then excluding it in the X dimension a little bit. Now we can, that looks good. So now we can we can accomplish this next step a couple of different ways. One way is the way I'm going to do now, which I'm just going to, there's one way we can, which let's see, this is the way I would normally do it. I'm just going to do it now this way as well, just for the sake of doing it in a way that feels comfortable for me. And then we can, so basically what I did was just selected these faces and then excluded in the Y dimension. And then I can just hit shift. Sorry, I can hit S, Y, and that and make the faces kind of even there. Maybe GY move it a little bit more further. Then add an edge loop here. Do the same thing by hitting SY to kind of make them a little bit more uniform. Then we can exclude these other faces. By hitting E, exclude. And then because we have clipping and merge on, they will merge and clip together. Delete the interior faces. Then we have a little thing to glab. Kind of looks a little small. This portion looks a little small, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it a little bit wider to kind of glab. And it doesn't look too cyberpunk light now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add some bevels. And it automatically looks a little bit better. And then I may just make it so it's kind of the entirety there. Yeah. That's good. So another thing we can do is kind of push this down. You can, if we flip this upside down, so if we just, I'm just gonna fly out a different look. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip that by kind of flipping it all in the, gonna S, flipping it in the X dimension. So I'm shifting X minus 1, Y minus 1. Yes, okay. So I flipped it Y minus 1, and then I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees in the X dimension. And we'll see which one I like better. So option A, there's option B. This makes a little bit more logical sense, right? Or this looks a little bit better. And then there's this option. This option kind of makes it look like you want to glab the bar. And this option makes it look like you want to glab the part that I want them to glab. So we'll just go with this one. Okay, it's got the bevels. It's got the shackles, it's got the guard. It's all looking okay for now. So that's good. I like that. This just is going to be real simple. So I just want a simple access panel just to try to learn how to do more hard ops. So now I will go and save this because you should save constantly. I should have saved a bunch while doing this. Okay. So we have the light, we have the floor panel, we have the little guard thing. I'm just gonna see how this looks with just a very simple color scheme. So we'll just paint this kind of a solid metal color. So we're going to paint this a solid metal color. Like that. Okay, not bad. We're just going to say this is a lead light. For bad. This is locked. We're actually going to give this a slightly different color. Okay. And then this will just make a third color. Okay. So for light now, it's looking okay. So what this is missing right now is some hinges. I'm gonna move this a little bit closer down. Make it a little bit smaller. So it's missing some hinges here. And I think the initial cutter is a bit too deep. So we'll just move this up a little bit. Okay, perfect. So we're gonna need some hinges here. The top. We got hinges here. Little thing with the lines. Hinges here. And then we're probably going to just add some maybe mag locks here. So there's a shackle there. There's a shackle here. Shackle here. Shackle here. Same thing on the other side. And then we have the little piston that connects them. And then we're probably going to get a keypad probably here. One of those big ones. Screen. And then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's how we'll look at the very end. I think we'll see. Okay, so the next step I'm going to do is the hinges. I can just replace all this. Okay. So next step is the hinges. So what I'm going to do that is I'm just going to draw using box cutter. I'm going to draw some squares. If you don't click on anything, it'll just make the object. I think it's kind of neat. So we're just going to make the square here. Maybe there. And I kind of make it so that this is in line. The center there. Okay. I'm gonna make it a little bit wider. And I'm gonna literally model it off of these hinges here, just because you don't want to make too many things kind of foreign. or not real, because then it starts looking it starts looking a little bit I don't want to say fake, but kind of out of so it's just looking like too many weird details, and then you start losing what makes it original, or like makes it grounded. That's the right word, grounded. Okay, so we can probably just leave that there and then just add a cylinder. So doing the same thing, just making a cylinder. Once again, click cylinder, shift click the, I'm gonna call this the hinge. Shift click the hinge, selection active, rotate 90 degrees in the Y. Then we're going to Y to about the whole way, I think. Okay. It's all looking very chunky, which I like. I prefer very chunky designs, at least here when making stuff for miniatures. So then what we'll do is we will add some we'll add some screws like they do flatheads. Or maybe not. Maybe this is just supposed to be welded or something. Yeah. So what I'm gonna do here kind of push these parts in. Push these parts in. So basically it's gonna look like, yeah. Then we can just chop this off here, maybe. Find a way, find to make this make the most sense it can. Just move that there, I guess. So I'm gonna leave that like that, because also when you're 3D printing, you want to make sure that like nothing's floating. You see how this portion is floating currently? So you don't want that. So I'm just gonna move that down slightly. And what I think I'll actually do is I will actually cut a portion. So you can use the double click here. And then I'm just going to bring this portion all the way down. Gonna confirm this. And I'm just gonna move this all the way down. Yeah. So it makes a little bit less sense IRL, but it will print easier. Well, it'll print period. So now I can just kind of mirror this. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some cuts into this top shackle part. Or I guess hinge. So I'm going to make the cut here. Yep. So I'm going to make the cut there. And then I'm going to add another way to this. Okay, perfect. Probably want 3. Like that. And then what I'll do is I'll add another cylinder. Ow. Just hit my table. So I can just add another cylinder here. Oh. Rotate in the Y 90 degrees. Make it look smaller. There you go. And what I can also do is kind of cut out a portion here. I want to see if I can duplicate this and then use this shape as a cutter. I'm pretty sure I can. We'll see. Well, I know I can, but I want to see if I can do it with box cutter. Now we take that and then use the Boolean tool, Boolean difference. And then, yep, perfect. And then since this is mirrored, not mirrored. There we go. Perfect. That's fine to me. So those are the hinges. So then we can kind of, when we make the final design, when we finalize everything, we can just copy. I'm just gonna copy this for now. And so now we're just gonna add some. I'm not gonna add any screws. I'm just gonna leave it kind of basic there to make it look like it's welded on. Yeah. Kind of look like it's welded on. I think I'm just gonna go with this. So I'm just gonna convert everything to mesh, and then just union everything together and then mirror it. Which I can do with here. Okay. What just happened? Just undo that. Okay. Let me see if I can just union the three of them together. Figure out how to do it with okay, so I'm just gonna figure out how to do it that later. So I'll just do like the unions here. And this unioning. Now I'll just union this here to the hinge. And now we have the full, no, we don't. Oh, union here to the hinge. And then we're going to, this should be it. Yep, there we go. That's the full, we'll just call this hinge. Yeah. Call this complete hinge. And it's there. Taking flat. And then we will just get this cylinder. Okay. This is a complete hinge. Okay, I don't really understand what's going on, but I'm just going to union these together. And then this should be, there we go. That's what I want to have. Okay. And then we can just mirror this across the, see if we can mirror this across the, like, center. Yes. There we go. Okay, so now we have the hinges here. So now the only thing we're missing is the mag lock and the, what is it called? The keypad. Okay, so we're just gonna add a keypad here. and it's in this general area. So once again, we're just gonna draw a cube here. Yeah, so I'll just maybe put it here. Maybe there, maybe over here. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do that, or just maybe make it a little bit lower. And then I'm going to take this face. And then put 2 here, 2 here. I should make a 9x9 grid. So then I am going to just take these faces. I can do this part really quick. So inset by hitting I again, and then just push them up, make them a little bit tinier. So you can either exclude them and then scale the top bar to the individual faces, and then you have a very, very, very fast key panel for 8 pieces. So I'm just gonna do one of these. So I excluded, I alt left clicked one of the faces, the edge of the faces to get that entire corner. Then I hit E to exclude, escaped, and then I just S to scale, and then Shift Z, scale in the Y and X dimension. So now, I don't know if I should give this a bevel or not. But just do it. If I use this tool. I don't know if I like that. I think I liked it with no bevel before. Yeah, I think I like it with no bevel better. And then we can, let me look up some keypads. Some CyberPunk keypad. CyberPunk keypads. These. Not keyboard. CyberPunk key. What would this be called? Control panel? Keypad? Okay. There we have some. It looks like they do something to the edge. They do something to the edge. So I think what I will do is Give that just a little bit. Just move down maybe. No, I want to give it the bevel. And then I'll probably do the same thing where I exclude. Again. There we go. That looks more like something. Move this up a little bit. Okay, that's cool. So now I'm going to just make the little face here by, this will be in hard ops, which I'll just make this here. Perfect. So now you can know if your little 1, 2, 3, 4 isn't working. Okay, so that's the key panel. So you just punch, punch, punch your numbers. This light changes and lets you open this. But right now there's no locking mechanism. So now I'm just gonna add very, very simple kind of locks on the side. Don't want to make it too complicated here. So I'm just going to do very similar to this thing here on the side, the hinges. So what I'll do here is just I'll just make one of these here. Then I will take this and then I will kind of give it one of these. Just moving in the X and the Y, or clicking the two edges and kind of scaling them in the X dimension a little bit to give them that edge there. Then I will cut this portion here. We'll cut that portion out. Right, perfect. And then I will add a metal shaft coming from here, connecting the 2 points. So what I'll do here, and maybe I can do this in hard up. So I'll fly this out. So I can maybe it's go into edit mode, macro. Or maybe it's Q basic select. Okay, perfect. So now I can take this. So yes, so I have this. And I can kind of inset it slightly. Here. And instead of unioning, I can do one of these. Then I can move this up further. I don't really understand what this bar is. Oh. I don't understand what that is. That's how you would do it, but I don't know why that's happening. This is another annoying thing that happens. Yeah, I don't know what this box is. I delete this box. Yeah, I don't know what that box was. Weird. Anyway, let's see if I can do this again from there. So I can do 2. I'm going to Q, Mesh Tools, Face Extract. Oh, I know what happened. Okay, I got it. I got it. I know what happened, but yeah, okay. So now we can, I got it. I think I got it. Q, Face Extract, hit this face, inset slightly, and then instead of unioning, you want to exclude that. And then I'm pretty sure if we move this up, okay, so that works better that way. I think what I'm going to do is move the box cutter here because you don't want anything floating, like I said earlier. So this doesn't make a lot of sense in the real world. So I'm just going to make it so that kind of does make some sense. Yeah, well, we'll just say that these mag lock cover that whole joining point. There we go. That looks like a cyberpunky mag lock. And then we can mirror these. Well, first we're going to take this and then we're going to add an overlay. So U overlay in the Y dimension. We want 1. And then we want to shift it in the axis, which is Control X. There we go. We want this to be 0. And then we want this to back to Y. Want to move it down here. And now we got 2 little maglock things. And then we can just mirror these across the axis panel. So I think that that's it. You can call this kind of done. As far as a very simple panel is for, move this down so it doesn't kind of, looks like it's kind of, there we go. So it's got all the little markings, so you can go in and add a little bit more detail. You can add screws to the hinge portions here. You can add screws to the maglock portion here. You can add face details, the actual panel. But I think for now, this looks good enough for me. Okay. This looks good enough for me. So that's how you do it. In the meantime, I may kind of touch this up and put it on my mini Factory to serve as just, I don't know, maybe a control objective or something else that you just want to put on a wall. You want to put it on a wall, you can do that as well. But I'm also going to maybe add a little bit more detail, maybe add numbers or like characters to the actual control panel. But that's probably all I'll add. Honestly, maybe I'll add a, no, I think I like it that way. We'll just say that it's like for like space or something. It does kind of look very space like. We'll just leave it like this. And yeah, so I'm probably gonna put this on my Instagram after I print it and paint it out, or print it, then paint it. Everything here should be printable. As you see, there's no like nothing floating. Everything's fairly big. You'll be able to get recess shading on a bunch of different places. Edge highlighting. I'm gonna enjoy painting this, I'll tell you that. But yeah, hopefully this helps anybody who's been looking for a little bit more I'm not gonna say tutorials, but like just see how easy it is to make very simple cyberpunk / sci-fi things. And I will see you next time. Maybe I'm gonna stream this weekend. We'll see. Thank you very much for watching though. I appreciate it.